blah, 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 blah.
Welcome to the Our Forever Smiles podcast, a podcast created to support mothers of children who were born with clefts and those who love them. I'm your host, Laura Arroyo, and I'm also a mother of a daughter who was born with a surprise cleft palate. I know the challenges you face every day. Whether you have just learned the difficult news of your baby's cleft lip or palate, you're in the midst of pre-op or post-op, or you're an OG cleft mom, this podcast is for you. In a weekly conversation, we will talk about everything from feeding and speech therapy to surgery and school. We'll share tips from guest experts and advocates and even share a little joy in the process. You can listen to Our Forever Smiles wherever you listen to podcasts. Don't forget to subscribe and stay tuned. Hey everyone, just wanted to take a moment to thank you for listening to the show. We're thrilled that you're here and enjoying the content. This podcast is completely free for you, but if you'd ever consider supporting the show, we truly appreciate it. One way you can do that is by using our affiliate links. These are links to products and services that we've mentioned on the show. And if you make a purchase through one of them, we might earn a small commission at no extra cost to you. It's a great way to show your love for the podcast and help us keep creating awesome content. Hello, and welcome back to the Our Forever Smiles, Cleft Mom Diaries, and Support podcast. I am Laura Arroyo. Thank you to all of our subscribers, new and old. I appreciate all of the support that we've received from this wonderful community. You can listen to us via Apple, Spotify, and everywhere that podcasts are available. Don't forget to subscribe if you have not yet, and stay tuned. As a note, we are not medical doctors, and we do not intend for you to use the information that we share here as medical advice. We are parents and advocates who love our children, and we are sharing our own personal experiences. I am so excited that we have a guest today. Ashlyn is here to talk a little bit about a topic that I've been dying to talk about because my daughter Giselle also had genetic testing. Genetic testing was a part of her journey, and so I've always been interested in genetics, and I've also wanted to have like a counselor on eventually. So this is a really great topic for the show today. Ashlyn is a stay-at-home mom. Her baby is her first child, and she lives in Texas. Welcome, Ashlyn.
Hi, thank you so much for having me on.
You're so welcome. What is your daughter's name, if you don't mind sharing?
It's Sailor.
Sailor?
Yes.
Oh, that's beautiful. Like Sailor Moon.
Thank you. Yeah.
Okay. Oh, that's so unique. I've actually never heard that. Like anyone named their baby. That's so beautiful.
Thank you.
So, talk to me about your cleft diagnosis. How did you discover your Sailor's cleft?
So it was actually at the 20-week anatomy scan, and they said that they couldn't really determine for sure because they couldn't get a great look at the face, but my doctor said they were about 99% sure. They don't normally, tell you if they're not pretty positive. So that was the first time that the cleft was brought up.
And were you shocked by that news, or?
Oh, yes, I cried when they told me. And I remember saying, I know that my baby is healthy. This is just something that's going on. But I said, is it okay that I'm crying? And my doctor's, of course, like it's news to something that you weren't expecting. And the journey that's to come along with it, you don't know exactly. And we don't have any clefts in either of our families, and not very many people like that I went to school with. It just wasn't something that wasn't even on my radar being pregnant. Like I didn't even think of that being something a part of our journey ever.
Yeah. And wow. We had someone, I can't remember who it was on the podcast that her doctor told her, like, you're taking this really, and I guess she was a little bit stoic and like, I don't know, because like sometimes you can be in like this sort of like shock almost, like not know how
Right.
to react in the situation. And so you're just, okay. And yeah, so tell me a little bit more about that day. Like, did your husband go with you or?
So actually, my mother-in-law was with me. My husband had to work, and he hadn't gone to really he wasn't able to go to any of my medical ultrasounds, the private ones, closer to us, and we could schedule them on our own. So he was able to, go to those, but I really wanted someone to go with me for this one. I really didn't think anything was wrong. I thought this is the time, it's like the longer ultrasound. And I'm very thankful that I had her there with me. We got into the elevator. I broke down a little bit more and she hugged me and she was telling me that everything's going to be okay. And I remember I called my mom crying again in the car and I said, I'm super, super thankful that everything else is great. She's super healthy. I said, I just don't know how to feel because this is not, especially being our first baby. I'm just like thinking, what struggles is she gonna have? And at the time, I didn't know it was a girl, but we didn't find out just yet. And I remember just having this thought of, and I know it probably sounds really bad. You think of your first daughter, your first baby, your first little girl, and you have this image of, is she gonna look just like me? Is she gonna look just like her dad? And then now you have this thrown in of she's going to look a little bit different.
Yeah.
And I never want her to, and see, I automatically jump till she gets older, and I never wanted her to question her beauty or say, I always wanted to look like my mom growing up and in that kind of sense. And I never wanted her to be like, I don't look like you, I have this scar or any type of feelings like that. That was just what I jumped to automatically. Yeah.
I feel like that's such a normal feeling that I think that people, I know like in the groups and people that we connect with, it's like the elephant in the room a little bit, especially like
Right.
when you're first diagnosed, or receive your diagnosis, it's kind of like one of the major concerns is like, what are they going to look like? And I have shared on this podcast as well is you want your first little girl to be like pretty and have a certain look, and you envision this life for them, which I don't know whether that's the best thing for us to do, right? But you just do it. You naturally just like have everything figured out in your mind, and then you go from, oh, I want this to have this like pretty, this quote unquote beautiful little girl, and then after that comes, once you're like, all shallowness aside, you also don't want your child to have to struggle because of their looks, right? Or because of the way that their anatomy is. And so it's really challenging, like, to have to go through that and then also explain that to other people. And just, there's a lot that we internalize going through that whole process of initially finding out. And oh man, I feel like that first like month is like so hard because you have so much turmoil and so many conflicting like messages in your mind, and you start looking for things. But just going back to your scan, so you didn't find out the gender during that scan. Did the diagnosis overshadow that, or did you still plan on like having a gender reveal, that type of thing?
Yeah, so we were just waiting for the gender reveal. So my mother-in-law got the gender. They told her the gender while we were there, but we didn't find out until a couple weeks later.
Oh, wow. Yeah, I've heard some people, they wanted to wait until the gender reveal, but once they found out about the cleft, they were like, look, just give me all the information.
Yeah, just right.
No. And I don't blame them. So that was that was pretty strong of you to be able to hold on.
Yes. And I had a really strong feeling that it was a girl.
Okay.
And it was so weird. I had so many dreams having a little boy. But as the pregnancy kept going on, I was like, I really feel like it's a little girl. And I think just having that is what also made me a little bit more upset, is because I was like, either way, it's not something that you want for your child. You know that you'll get through it, but at the time of the diagnosis, and you're just thinking of all of the bad and you don't see any light yet.
Yeah. And so obviously your mother-in-law learns this information as you're learning it. So when did you finally tell your husband?
I'm pretty sure I went over to my in-laws' house, and we just hung out for a little bit until my husband was getting off of work. And I was gonna wait until I got home, and I just felt like I didn't want to tell him in person. So I decided to call him while we were both on the way home.
Hello, everyone. Sorry to interrupt, but I need a little bit of help. If you're listening to this on the Apple Podcast app or YouTube, you may see a follow plus sign or subscribe button. If you're able to, it would mean the world to me if you could follow or subscribe. That's the best way to support this show. If you subscribe, I'm able to show it to potential guests or different brands. It helps to grow the show and reach more communities to continue building awareness about the cleft lip and palate journey on a global scale. Thank you so, so much. Back to the conversation.
And I started crying, and I knew I would, and he was, oh my gosh, is everything okay? Is there something wrong with the baby? And I'm like, yes, there's something wrong. And he's, asking me all these questions, and I told him that, our baby was going to have a cleft lip and probably a cleft palate as well. And I just remember him saying, I thought that something horrible had happened. I thought you were going to tell me you lost the baby. I thought it was something horrible. And I'm like, how do you not think this is horrible? Like, my emotions are all over the place. And he's just like, oh, because of course it's hard. You don't know how your partner's going to react.
Yeah.
Of course, I know my husband, and I never would have thought that it would have changed anything, but you still never know. You just don't know how that diagnosis affects people and as a parent, and what you're going to have to go through with your child for a while.
Yeah. And I guess do you feel like you didn't want to tell him in person because you were going to like ugly cry through like the whole thing? Or was there like some other, because I feel like I feel like I would have that same thing, that I would like burst into tears, and like I would be like not able to get it out. So it may be easier to
exactly.
say it over the phone.
Yeah, I feel like I would have just been crying, and he would have probably been having a heart attack, even worse than he was over the phone. I couldn't get it together. But yeah, I feel like in person I would have just absolutely lost it.
Yeah. Heart goes out to both of you, because I know that those moments are really tough. And it is interesting, as I've shared earlier before we started recording, it's always, I want to know like the reaction from the spouse, like what, like I have a set of questions that I typically ask. And one of them entails like, how did your husband react? And it varies from different families, and also our experience as mothers as well. It varies as well. And I also spoke to another couple, Courtney Glockner. She said that her husband responded similar to your husband, and that it was like, oh, you relax.
Yes.
Like, you're doing a bit much for it to just be a cleft. And of course, as we know, it isn't just a cleft, right? There's so many things that are wrapped into that diagnosis, things that I had no idea about. Whenever my daughter was born, I had to do a lot of educating myself, and you'd be shocked at how many medical professionals even lack the guidance or proper education in order to even show you how to do things as mothers. And so it is really difficult to navigate in this space and to have the information that you need in order for your baby to thrive. And so
Yeah.
I guess after you learned your diagnosis, what did you do to prepare yourself, or what were your appointments like after that?
First thing that my doctor told me was not to get on Google, which of course I had to. And surprisingly, I see a lot of Cleft moms that I guess start having some high risk appointments or I've seen that in the community a little bit. And we were just told as the pregnancy goes further, we'll eventually meet with the Cleft team. That really didn't have anything extra. I don't even think we did another ultrasound after that. Then I was supposed to be a 7-week appointment, and I ended up going into labor at 36 weeks. I didn't even get to go to that last appointment. So we hadn't even, I think that's when we were supposed to talk with a surgeon and all the other. We actually didn't. So we ended up meeting our surgeon at the hospital that I had her at, which it really worked out great because he was a part of that hospital. So he was able to work with her while she was in the NICU because she had a 2-month NICU stay. And so I think that was really great, having him be hands-on that early because she was in the NICU for a while. I do see some other moms that their littles are in the NICU and their surgeon, a part of that hospital, so they're not able to be seen yet and get fitted for the NAM or just have that first appointment with them just yet.
Oh, so in the NICU, she was able to get fitted for her NAM and everything? Oh,
Yes, he came in. Yeah, so it was great. I didn't even know that wasn't a normal thing. That was our situation. And then I talked to other Cleft moms and I say, because she got fitted pretty early and then she actually got it at 4 weeks old. And that just like super helped her tremendously with feeding. And so I advise to moms that I see in the community and their babies are in the NICU. And I mention that and they say they won't see the little until they're out of the NICU.
Yeah, I guess, yeah, there's standard like protocols that all teams have, like, but then they also have like different things that they do or are able to do. And sometimes it's a matter of just like pushing back, like advocating for yourself. It's because from what I've learned from talking to other professionals as well, is that sometimes hospitals will do things just because it's always been done that way, and takes a parent to advocate and help them see it a different way in order for them to even consider making any changes. But yeah, that was that feels like a godsend to be able to have that, because my daughter Giselle as well, she had a NICU stay and it was about 5 days. And like, I'm sure in the beginning when you're told that your baby's going to even go to the NICU, you're like, it feels like your heart is ripped out of your chest because you eventually are discharged as a patient. So it's no, you go home and she stays. And
right.
Like my mind couldn't even comprehend that in the moment. I'm like, I don't know. I tell everyone I describe that as unnatural. It just felt like, this feels really strange in my body. And I agree. But at least when we're looking at the bright side of things, at least you were able to get a lot of things done. And it was like, on the flip side, she was getting like really great care, and she wasn't just in there just passing time. She was able to get other things that she needed to get done in order to make progress and continue to thrive. So we're talking about the NICU, but the day that you went into labor, what was that like?
So my water did break, and I remember it wasn't anything like, so I was, and me and my husband, this is our first child, and I'm just like, is this really happening? Because I'm like 4 weeks early, and I don't want to be thinking if this isn't really the real deal. Our hospital was an hour away, so it was like, you don't want to pack up everything and go. It was in the middle of the night. It was like 2 a.m. And so I called my on-call doctor, explained everything, and she said, yeah, that does sound like your water broke. So we get to the hospital, and at first they were trying to play it off. Oh, you're too early. This is your first baby. We don't think that you're actually in labor. And I thought, okay, so I guess we did. They do whatever. They look at everything and they say, oh no, you're definitely in labor. And I remember at time kept, I guess I wasn't really dilating at all. Or it was super, super slow. I had the Pitocin to help that go quicker. And I wanted more than anything for my mom to be in the room. And mind you, they hour away from them now at the hospital. And all the nurses kept saying, no, we'll have plenty of time. You'll have plenty of time to call them and they'll have enough time to get here. I kid you not. I mean, it went from like 0 to 10 in no time. I got the epidural. It wasn't working. It didn't help. I was like, I'm in so much pain. And they're like, it really should be helping by now. I got sick. I started throwing up. I was like, and that could be a sign of the epidural, or it's a sign of you're about to give birth. They just didn't really know. And they with your first, normally it's a longer. They were like, you're probably not going to have it till tomorrow. There's no reason to have all your family come up here. Then it was like 10 minutes of, okay, it's time to start pushing. And I'm like looking at my husband, like, please call my mom. I hope she can get here in time. Aww. And so he's texting, and it all happened so fast.
So did she make it?
No, she didn't.
Oh,
unfortunately.
Oh, I mean,
really sad. Yeah.
On the bright side, at least you weren't pushing for 2 days.
Oh, I know. Yeah, I was like, the birthing part actually wasn't that bad. It was just the pain, of course, leading up to it, but that she missed that.
Yeah. And when you saw Sailor?
Cannot lie that there was some mixed emotions there. And I sometimes hate to admit that. It was hard because I'm like, and then the first thing that was said was the palate is affected as well. And so that was just the first of like, you had that little bit of hope of, hopefully it wasn't. And then they said that. And I remember it took a little bit of time. They also said I wasn't going to be able to do chest to chest with her because she was having some trouble with breathing. And so they were actually planning on just like taking her out of the room right away. And I think I didn't really have that time. I just got to look at her. They put her to the side to clean her and everything. And that's when they told me her breathing was having some difficulties. We're probably just going to go ahead and take her down to the NICU. I was just, okay, I have a lot of information. Your body is just in shock from everything that you've been through. But then they did hand me all wrapped up. We can give you a few minutes before we take her down. And I think that was exactly what I needed because I get to look close into her. Her eyes were wide open.
Oh my
She was just so aware from the beginning. And I just thought, oh my gosh, like, that this is mine, that she's here and I love her already. And yeah, I think I fell in love as soon as I got to really hold her and know that like, she is mine. I'm going to take care of her. All my worries are gone from this moment.
Yeah, I understand that too. I guess like just as you were saying, like in the movies, how it's this, you expect all the things to happen, right? Like the baby comes out and you like start bawling, crying because you're just so in love. And like when in reality, like, especially if you've had an epidural, if you've been in labor for 3 days and you haven't slept, there's a lot going on in your mind and you're actually a little bit like delirious at that point. Like once the baby comes out and they're like, yeah, here. And they just throw this like blob on your stomach while they're continuing to work on you because they're trying to make sure that you deliver your placenta and that you don't bleed out. And so, it's so funny because my fiance is like, you didn't have the reaction that I thought you would. And I'm like, I just had what did you want me to do? Like,
yes.
And so, yeah, when I had the same thing, like in that moment when she came out, my daughter as well, she had these big bright eyes. They talked about it in the hospital all the time as she moved around. They're like, everybody come look at this baby and her eyes. And yeah, it was such a sweet thing. And yeah, I remember that moment as well, just being like totally out of it. But then when everything calmed down and I was able to like, actually make this connection with her. And, you know, when they basically put you in your room and they hand her over and stuff, it's like you're able, it all settles. And then you have this like, this connection with this human that's, yeah, I'm going to literally do everything that I can to protect this. And like that whole mama bear thing, like you're like, it just comes out of you like naturally. I'm so shocked at how that, that's not something that I had to learn. It just happened like as soon as she was born and she was settled. And so she was moved to the NICU, right after birth. And I guess, what was the decision to keep her there for 2 months? Was it still like her having trouble breathing, or was it the feeding, or what was that decision?
So it was the feeding. Her breathing was good pretty much as soon as she got down there. I think they think it was just going through the birth and just the normal stuff like that. But yeah, it was the feeding, and she was premature. She was 4 pounds, 14 ounces. And so she was small, and with the cleft, it wasn't in her favor. And everyone just kept saying how she would get tired really easily, or she really just wasn't interested at all. And so that was something that I didn't expect at all. I knew that there would probably be difficulties, but I'm like, we have the specialty bottles. And that's really all I knew was the specialty bottles. I didn't know. We feed her side lying on her left side because her cleft's on the right. So you just position the nipple onto the side where she does have the palate. And I think it just all that, learning all these different things while you're in the NICU, it's hard too because some of the nurses had either never worked or taking care of a cleft baby, or they're like, oh yeah, I have one 2 years ago or something.
Yeah.
So it was hard too because I do feel like we had one amazing nurse. I never wanted her to leave. And I felt you can't do that. She has a family. She has time. She has to have time off. But I'm like, I need you here 24/7, 7 days a week. Please do not leave her here with anyone else.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's so funny. I know exactly what you mean. It was it was actually my labor and delivery nurse that was like, she's like, oh, I'm gonna head out. This is your new nurse. And she was, of course, they were transferring shifts. And so I looked at her and I'm like, where are you going? What do you mean? And now, like, when I think about it, I'm like, yeah, she doesn't live at the hospital.
Right.
Because she goes home. So, yeah, I could totally see that. And then when you, like, have that one person that you feel like is confident enough in their care for your baby, you're like, yeah, stay, like, forever.
Yes. And then she also took a 2-week vacation out of the country. And I was like, are you really? We can't reschedule this, please. I'm like, we need you right now.
Aw, that is so sweet. And were you discharged like a few days later and then you had the opportunity to come back and forth? What was that like in terms of coming to see her in the hospital?
I think they let me stay for 3 days, 3 full days. And then we went back home, and my husband I believe he was able to get a week off. And so we would go to the hospital every day. And then once he went back to work, I still went to the hospital every day. And that's, like I said, it's an hour drive. I would stay for at least 3 to 5 hours, depending if I knew a certain doctor or the surgeon was going to be there, and trying to plan to meet with them. But I was also trying to be there for as many feeds as I could to help her, for me to learn, for me to be comfortable with everything. I'm just trying to be consistent for her. There's nothing worse than, we did have an instance where we went during a night shift one time, and I could just tell the second we met the nurse, and I just felt she had no compassion. She was just like, here, here's her stuff, all this stuff, and make the bottle. And I just got, I'm sorry, I've never made the bottle. Like, can you just show me? She was already giving me that vibe of, I don't want to do anything. Like, you're here now, you do everything. You're still learning. And it was hard because it's a weird environment to learn. You have all the wires you're constantly worried about. You have people, our NICU was full of babies and they're at all different times. There's other parents in there and it was definitely difficult, but I did go every day, which was definitely mentally draining on me. I did have a few days where I had to say, I have to stay home. I have to just do something for myself, whether it's just take a really long shower that I needed and just get the laundry done in the house, get everything ready. And we had bought our home after I gave birth. Process of moving, I was getting everything, I was leaving it to my husband when he got off of work to, hey, here's a list of all these things you need to do. And I just felt like it was just too much for me at the time. And I remember feeling so guilty about missing those couple of days that I did. But afterwards, I found myself way more energized.
Mm-hmm.
And sitting in the NICU, yes, there's beeps and there's people talking, but it's so quiet.
Yes.
It's so quiet. I would get so tired sitting there. And sometimes I would be super tired on the drive home, so it's totally normal to take a break and just let yourself really rest. And I still called up there and asked, who's her nurse? How's she doing? And I called after every feed, I was still checking in on her. And that I love that they do that. Obviously, I feel like you should have the opportunity to check in, but it was just really nice to have that where it's okay. I don't have to be up there today. He's doing fine. Everything's good. And they'll always call you if something happens and you need to be there.
Yeah, one of the best pieces of advice that I got, it's actually funny now looking back on it, but I was like moping around. Giselle had been admitted to the NICU and I still had like a day left and I was walking back and forth from my room to the NICU and I was just really sad. And one of the nurses looked at me and says, honey, you have the rest of your life to take care of that baby. Go get some rest. And
I love that.
Yeah, and in the moment, of course, it's just like, but I miss my baby. But then when I was finally able to bring her home and I was all sleep deprived, I'm like, I wish I would have taken the extra naps.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah. So again, as you shared, do not feel guilty especially it's not good for you if you feel like you're losing it or you're on the road and you're tired. And yeah, like you have to, just like they say, you have to put your oxygen mask on first in order to help others and to help someone else. You have to take care of yourself first to be the best mother that you can be. And I know like my NICU team, they told me you are free to come and go as you please. We are always here. We can provide you with updates. And they said, we do not encourage you to stay bedside. There are people who do, but it is really hard. And they were right. Like even the 5 days that she was there, it was really difficult. And the hospital that Giselle was at was also, it's about like 45 minutes to an hour from my house. So it is. And then those drives are like, aren't they so sad? I'm sorry to.
Yes. No, and like
sad.
No music was on. I'm just crying on the way home. Like, this is not how it's supposed to be. And then every morning when I would go there, it would be like, oh my gosh, I can't wait to see her. Like you get that jittery, but then it's like you get there and it just isn't the same. It's not.
Yeah.
Like I remember being so upset that I hadn't ever seen her. I'm like, do they clip her fingernails for her? Because they look like they're clipped. I'm like, I didn't get to do that. I'm like, has she gotten a bath yet? Those are the little things that it was hard to miss out or think about. And also, like, they didn't encourage bringing, like, clothes for her to wear. They have those little white, I think they're, like, onesies that are cut, like a little shirt that they would just wear.
Mm-hmm.
Just because it's easier. They were way bigger in size to just... Yeah, it was definitely tough. And yeah, I remember the first time I was able to bring her an outfit, I had it in the car and I was just like, oh my gosh, like this is gonna look so cute on her, and it was so big on her. I remember she is so tiny. I can't believe.
Yeah. Yeah, that's so, wow. It's like we experience the same things. Like I remember are just like the same feelings. You know, sometimes you think that you're alone in something and it's like mothers that are like going through the same exact things like all over around the world. And until it happens to you, you don't
Mm-hmm.
even consider it. Like you don't even think about it at
Right.
all. But yeah, I remember they, once Giselle started feeling a little bit better, I came one day and she was in what was not hospital clothes. Like it was like a donated little long sleeve
Oh,
onesie. And I was like, oh, like they changed her clothes. And I felt like it was like so cute because it was the first time that I had seen her without like hospital clothes on or what, like a
right.
onesie. And and then the other part of me was like, oh, I wish that it was something that I brought to her. But it felt endearing because I know
Yes.
some family that was probably in the same position as us donated these clothes and I felt that connection. But then I just felt sorry for myself that I didn't get to put it on her or
Oh,
be a
yes.
part of
I
that
know
decision to change her clothes. It's,
yes. It's hard.
yeah. Was eventually diagnosed with 18q deletion syndrome. So,
Yeah.
what is 18q deletion syndrome?
So 18q deletion, it's basically missing one of her chromosome 18s. Um, and the reason that they even tested or did further genetic testing was because of the cleft. And we had already done I think it's called like the NIPT testing at the very beginning of the pregnancy, and everything came back normal, which we later would find out that those that testing test for more of the common genetic abnormalities, and so it would have never been picked up on that type of testing. I think they said maybe like the amnio during pregnancy probably would have been the one to pick it up.
Hmm.
Um, but yes, so yeah, two weeks old, she got diagnosed with that. And it was really hard because it's super rare. It affects 1 in 55,000 babies.
Hmm.
And so there wasn't really a lot of information. We got this packet that had a bunch of information, but the hardest part about it is that there's no two babies have the same symptoms from it. So while one can be born with a cleft lip, the other could not, and they have some other abnormality. And it really varies, and that is the hardest part. I think of was for me to accept it was okay, there's no this is gonna happen and this and this.
Hmm.
It's okay, we're not sure about this. It just kept there's so much unknown behind it. So I think that was really hard getting the initial diagnosis from that.
Yeah. Do they give you like a list of things that could potentially, even though it's
Yes,
not like everything, right? Like you don't have, even though it's not like every sailor may not have all of them, right? But do they give you
correct.
like a list of all things that could happen?
Yes. And so, I mean, these are just a few of the main ones, like short stature or growth deficiency, weak muscle tone, also known as hypotonia. Some seizures could possibly come into play, neurodevelopmental or disorders, um, and also developmental delays, which is what we've seen most with her now that she's gotten a little bit bigger. And that's another hard thing is like you don't know when these symptoms are going to occur. It's like you just if you notice something, you know, try to get it checked out and moving forward from there. Um, but
Yeah.
yeah, I think there's just so much, and some of them, are more so okay, the cleft. Well, be born with it or not born with it. That's not something that she's going to develop as she gets older. And so there's some other things along that. I think clubfoot was one of them. A lot of heart issues as well. Those are things that are more than likely going to happen at birth. It's not something that you'll worry on. They're not going to get that as they get older.
What made you get your genetic testing? Because, I'll give you a little bit of a backstory. So when we had our first appointment with Giselle's surgeon, they looked at her, of course, and she said, oh, she has a small jaw. Let's schedule her with genetics. And so, of course, like, I'm like, okay, what was that about? So they didn't say anything about it, but naturally I went home and I looked it up. And so what I found is that, and what I think happened is they were thinking that Giselle had Pierre-Robin sequence. And so because of that, we did go to genetics. It turns out that that's just her anatomy, and she had an isolated cleft, so she hadn't been diagnosed with PRS, but like that's the reason why we went to genetics. But from what I've noticed and spoke with other people about, not everyone is sent to genetics. And I thought to myself, I'm so glad that I was, but because wouldn't you want to know? But there are so many families I talk to that they're just like, no, I mean, they said most likely it's isolated. And I'm like, but you don't know for sure. Like, that's just me projecting. But yeah, so was that something that you pushed for, or did they suggest it, or how did that all
So
happen?
yeah, they just went ahead and suggested it. They also said that like she does have a little bit more wide set eyes. I'm not sure if that was something. But they said definitely the cleft made them look into it. And I want to say, we don't know for sure, but she was also born with a skin tag on one of her ears.
Mm-hmm.
And it's super crazy because after looking into trying to find other families that also have this 18q deletion, I found a little girl and she has the exact same skin tag on her ear.
Oh, wow.
And she was a little bit older and she still had it. We actually had salers removed during another surgery. But I don't know, like that's not a symptom when you Google or look into the packet of 18Qs. I feel like there's things that they still don't know about. I feel like it's too much of a coincidence. It can't be a coincidence to have it in the same spot. And I know skin tags happen, but to be in the same area, to have the same chromosomal syndrome, I just feel like there has to be something connected there.
Yeah. Did you ever talk to anyone about that? I don't know. Sometimes I just feel, let me educate you all about that. Add this to your research.
A big genetic research program in San Antonio, Texas, so not too terribly far from us. And I did sign up Sailor to do that. It's just a lot of, it's like extra blood work and extra doctor visits for them to have their doctors look at her and look at everything and do all this extra testing. And just been going through a lot right now, just working on her and getting her, just loving her and being with her and working on her hitting her milestones. I'm like, I just don't want to. San Antonio is still a 3-hour drive, so I have to go there and go through all this right now. It's something that I really want to do. I just thought that maybe after her palate repair, because then, we won't have much going on after that. She'll be a little bit older. So we are looking to get into more of a research program that they follow these kiddos for the rest of their lives, to see, because they're always trying to find the similarities. Even though no two babies have the exact same, you're still trying to find that, okay, how are they connected in some way?
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's really cool and like super commendable, because there'd be like some people that would be like, I'm not going to sign my kid up to be like some science experiment. But I think like with me, I would feel like, number one, I just want to know and have as much information as I can. And I also just want to be like the first to know as well, because that's what research is about. But also you're helping so many other families, like with like future health and science and the decisions that are made based on what they find. I think that it's really commendable. I was going to ask you as well, so was she ever put on a feeding tube?
Okay, so we did have the NG tube for basically the whole time of her NICU stay. And then once she was about to turn, where she was getting, maybe her, and it's so hard to like not even remember exact dates and stuff now. But yeah, once we started getting closer to what we thought it was too long for her being in the NICU. Like, we felt we don't really want her to be in here too much longer. What are our options? How can we get her home sooner? And so they had mentioned a G tube, surgically placed feeding tube into the stomach. And obviously, right off the bat, I said, nope, don't want that. That's not something I'm interested in. It's another surgery. And just looking more into it, it's a lot of, I almost felt, okay, she obviously did have to, we did go ahead and go through with the surgery. So she did come home just a week after getting the G tubes. Was super quick, but learning everything and having to know what to do when it comes out. And I have no nurse background. I just didn't, and I already felt like the NAM was a lot of work. That's a totally new part of your routine, and it's just so hard. Their mouths are so tiny. You're wanting to make comfortable, and now I have this whole other thing that I'm dealing with as well. But yeah, she did get the G tube, and we actually just got it removed. Yeah. And that was a very exciting moment for us. We were going to wait until after palate repair, but we started having a few issues with it. And I just decided there are so many cleft kiddos that have the lip repair, have the palate repair without it.
Yeah.
And I know it's hard. I know because after Sailor's lip repair, having the G tube was life-saving. I mean, we didn't have to try and force the bottle feeding. It was just really nice to have that as a backup. But she used it for 1 week, and then we were back to 100% bottle feeds.
Oh, wow.
So yeah, it was just a decision that me and her dad made, and we just decided we want this thing out. And thankfully, her doctors agreed and said that she's doing good. She's not using it, so that's the biggest thing.
Yeah.
And I just have to be a little extra prepared with the palate repair.
I can give you all the tips and tricks that I can. But yeah, one of the things I also wanted to mention that you talked about before is I think that there might be this misconception that it's okay, I got all the bottles, like I know, like I'm just waiting on baby. But you don't really know, like once your baby is born, like how they're actually going to respond to the bottle. And I know for Giselle, everything was coming out of her nose, and so she was sneezing, everything like sneezing, and it was like heartbreaking for me to watch this. Like it was like nothing was like going down. And it takes a little second for them to adjust. And so I think moms need to be a little bit more prepared for that moment. Hey, this isn't just like I'm going to pop the specialty bottle and all things are going to be good. You really have to like trial and error this thing and like really figure out what your baby's preference is and really get someone that is like dedicated to being with you to watch a feed and to make sure that everything is like happening in the way that it's supposed to. And sometimes there are some teams that just don't have that person to be there. And so that can be really challenging, but you have to manage your expectations there. And if you aren't able to get like a specialty bottle that works for your baby, they will suggest that you have a feeding tube. And so that's really great though, that what you said, because I didn't consider that you didn't really have to stress so much about the feeding for the lip repair. So that was like one less thing that you all had to really worry about. How did you end up doing the NAM before repair?
We did.
Okay. And were you pretty consistent with it, or did you find yourself?
Oh, yes.
Yeah. Oh,
yeah.
wow.
I actually got really good at it. It almost was like, I don't want to say fun, but it was like, it was our routine. And I'm like, okay, I know I'm going to go in there. I know I'm going to clean it. I had everything set up on her little dresser in her room. And I just remember feeling really prepared for it. I think that's what set us off for, we had them record how to do it while she was in the NICU. We recorded the surgeon doing it. I always had that to look back on. But eventually, like I said, I figured it out. And it was a long time, though. It was I want to say, started at a month. So it was 4 months that we did it. Yeah. Until her lip repair at 5 months old.
Oh, wow. And how did she do with lip repair? Or really, how did you all do?
She really did really good. It was so hard seeing her right after. The big old swollen face. No one mentioned this being swollen. I don't know if I just overlooked that. But I just remember seeing her. I'm like, Not her. That's a big girl.
I've heard that reaction so many times. It's so funny. It's like you come down the hall and they're like, oh, your baby's ready. And you're like, that is not my baby.
Yeah.
And you miss it. Like you missed the grin. Yeah.
Oh, I know. Her smile was so big. Of course, the wide smile. And it was just them. That's just who they are. It's literally the face that you fall in love with. Then you do see them after surgery and you're like, oh, this is going to take some time to adjust to. And then it's now I see her and I'm just like, I don't, of course I remember, but I just see you now and it's like I just fall in love with who you are in that moment. And I'm not even thinking about the past or anything. I've always seen this beautiful face. But yeah, the wide smile, I still have. I look at all my pictures of her every once in a while and I'm like, oh my gosh, her mouth was so wide. Could open so wide when she would laugh.
No, I don't really know. Maybe I have seen pictures of your husband, but Sailor looks just like you. I feel like
Oh my
she's
God.
so cute. Like you all take pictures together and I'm like, they are like twins.
Thank you. No, she definitely has her dad's blonde hair, blue eyes. But a lot of people do say it's okay. Maybe she has his features, but a lot of them do say that she does resemble me a lot.
Yeah, I
And
don't
so
know.
that's nice.
I think it might be like the shape of your head. It's like it just like you're next to her when you're holding her. It's like your twin. It's so cute. I
Aw,
love it. Yeah.
thank you.
Oh my goodness. So, what is something that you wish people knew about children with cleft lip and palate?
That while things may be harder, they are like any other baby. I always was worried with the feeding, with the surgeries, but it's like they bounce back from it and then it's their happy selves. And I'm like, people don't even know all that you've been through, Sailor. They don't look at you and know the struggles that you've had because you're just like every other baby when they see you. And
Yeah.
I think that's something I didn't know either before becoming a cleft mom.
Yeah, for sure. And what do you think has been your biggest lesson learned in along your journey?
Definitely, I feel like I was always a perfectionist. And so learning about the cleft of my first baby girl and just everything that we've gone through, my idea of perfection has changed.
Hmm.
Because I always had this idea of a perfect baby and what I thought that would look like. And I could not have asked God to bless me with a more perfect baby. So my idea is just that's the biggest lesson for me because I feel like it wasn't good, the perfectionist in me that I had prior to her having her. And so it's really helped me change my heart a lot having her.
I love that. I love that answer. Thank you so much, Ashlyn, for joining us on the podcast today.
Thank you so much.
And thank you all for listening to the Our Forever Smiles, Cleft Mom Diaries, and Support podcast. Be sure to subscribe and submit a review of the podcast wherever you listen. I hope that you've enjoyed this audio experience. Maybe you cried a little, laughed a little, but more importantly, I hope that you feel a little piece of reassurance and even joy in your journey. Talk to you next week.